Acura's all-new ADX, a compact SUV that isn't just built for one thing, it's precision crafted for everything. To escape the grind with available all-wheel drive. To go with your flow with available Google built-in.
Hey Google, turn it up.
Okay, turning up the volume. And crafted to be heard with an available Bang & Olufsen premium sound system. The all-new Acura ADX, crafted to match your energy. Acura, precision crafted performance.
Take your vibes and go.
Google is a trademark of Google LLC.
Look around. You can find cars like these on AutoTrader, like that car riding your tail. Or if you're tailgating right now, all those cars doubling as kitchens and living rooms are on AutoTrader too. Are you working out and listening to this ad at the same time? Well, multitasking pro, cars like the ones in the gym parking lot are for sale on AutoTrader. New cars, used cars, electric cars, maybe even flying cars. Okay, no flying cars, but as soon as they get invented, they'll be on AutoTrader. Just you wait. AutoTrader.
Hey all, I'm Jamie Lynn Sigler, a mom, actor, and advocate. I know how overwhelming it can be trying to decide which treatment is right for you. I've been there. But you should know you're not alone. You can do this. Start with some research, talk to the community, and most importantly, don't be afraid to ask your doctor questions. You might find results that speak for themselves. That's how I landed on Kesimpta. Ask your doctor if Kesimpta, ofatumumab, could be right for you. You can check out the details at kesimpta.com.
We're back here at the Dynasty Rewind for another video. But listen, it's a different pairing. I don't know how many videos I've done with Nate the Great, who also, this might be the first time we've ever done a video where your beard outshines mine, which, I mean, kudos to you, man. That beard is popping. Give some love to that beard in the comment section, ladies and gentlemen. But Nate, it's good to see you. We're gonna have a fun video topic today. But just how have you been, man? Like, you're excited for draft week, right? Because I'm so pumped for this week, and I'm hanging with you in your crib this week too.
Yes, you are, man. I'm excited about it. You know, I'm so excited about it that it is Easter Sunday today, and we're still recording here, Zach. Right. You and I.
That's right, man. That's right. So we're going to do a mailbag video. I've been thinking about different topics that we can do, and I think this is something we should try to do every once in a while and just see the questions that our Discord users may have, which, by the way, you can get access to that Discord. I think we're doing a free week still throughout the draft. And you can decide if you want to stick around or not, if it's for you. We have so many different channels. We have an NFL draft channel. We already have a 2026 NFL draft channel. So it's just a fun place to be. So look in the pinned comments below. Get access to our Discord for a week. Come and chat with us. You can tag us. You know, sometimes it might take us a while to see the tag or the comment, but that's a direct way for us to interact with you guys, especially as your rookie drafts approach and we get into the season where, heck, even I have questions all the time where I'm texting Bob or Mike or Nate, like, what do I do here? So that's a great place to get in there. So check out our Discord, free week access. Just make sure if you have other questions, you're hitting us up on Twitter at Dynasty Rewind, all that kind of good stuff. We're all over the place. We're trying to get more on the socials, on Facebook, on Twitter. We're not on TikTok yet, but I mean, maybe one day, maybe one of us.
I think we're over there. I thought we were over there.
I don't know. I'm not on TikTok.
I don't want TikTok.
I don't want the Russians to have all my information. So I'm just messing. I don't know anything, man. I'm too boomer for TikTok right now. So we have a lot of questions here. We'll get to as many of them as we can. If we don't be offended. You have access to us in the Discord. But all these questions come from our Discord or from people reaching out to us on Twitter. So I'm just going to get to some of these questions. I'll let you know who asked these, Nate. But, we're going to have just a conversational back and forth about some of these. All right. Yeah. So this question comes from Lambo Leap, one of our favorite Discord members. I'm in a Goldie League with Lambo. I mean, that's what we do in our Discord, by the way. So Lambo asked, and I thought this was a great question because I've had 2 rookie drafts already prior to the NFL draft, which, that's why I'm in so many fantasy leagues. I just like to try different things. And this question came in, and it really pertained to our draft this past week. And he said, what spot do you feel comfortable drafting Travis Hunter in your rookie drafts? So, Nate, where are you comfortable drafting him? Obviously, we're looking at the landing spots, most likely of Cleveland or New England. And I would imagine that in both of those places, he's primarily a wide receiver. So where are you comfortable taking him in your rookie drafts, Nate?
Yeah, that's something I've thought about a lot here recently as we've gotten really close to the draft. For a long time, I was very conservative with my placing of Travis Hunter in mock drafts. We constantly have him late first, in the second round even. And, we're getting crap for in the comments. And, I get it. People are ahead of the game maybe a little bit, being a bit more progressive. But I didn't know if he's going to be playing wide receiver or cornerback. And, I was taking that into account. And until the NFL told me what they thought, I was not going to assume. Now, we are days away from the NFL draft, and Andrew Berry, the GM of the Browns, has said that Travis Hunter, to him, is a wide receiver who can play a little bit of cornerback. We've also heard from Travis Hunter as of recently that he is a wide receiver first who also plays cornerback. So it has seemed like it's been locked in that at the next level, Travis Hunter will be playing wide receiver primarily. Now, if that, might equate more to 70% of the snaps rather than 90+% of the snaps, we'll still see the nuances of that once we get there. But with the fact that he is, pegged to be playing wide receiver primarily, Travis Hunter, just as a prospect, just as a wide receiver prospect, not really projecting fantasy-wise, is my wide receiver one in this draft class. I think he's the best wide receiver with the most upside in this draft class. He has the ability to be one of the best in the league. So with him going most likely to the Browns at this point, looks like he's probably going to be the second overall pick. Going to the Browns, playing wide receiver, being the wide receiver one there over Jerry Jeudy, I'd imagine. I don't know who's throwing him the ball outside of Kenny Pickett, Super Bowl champion, or Super Bowl champion Joe Flacco. One of those two guys. I mean, I'm going to prefer Joe Flacco there. We saw what he could do with the Browns 2 years ago. But for me, Travis Hunter, if he's playing wide receiver full-time with the upside that I do think he brings to be one of the best in the league, I put him, I think I did my top 12 in the last podcast. I'm taking a look at it right now. I had him at the 105. I had Ashton Genty, Cam Ward, Henderson, Hampton above him because I do think it's important to go get running backs in this draft. Even though there are plenty of them, I think there's some really good ones there at the top. But Travis Hunter, I'm happy taking him at the 105. If you really need a wide receiver, I don't know how much farther above that I'm willing to go just because there is the idea of him playing both sides. Does that mean more injuries? Does it mean a lower snap percentage? I do think if he gets out there for 70% of the snaps and it's not 90%, I'm not going to be too worried about that, quite honestly, because when he's out there, they're going to target him. When he's on the field, he's going to get the ball. If he's not on the field all the time. So I think the 105 is a pretty sweet spot for him where you let the guys that you feel really safe about from a fantasy football production wise kind of outlook, you get those guys and then you move on to Travis Hunter. I do have him over Ted McMillan, over Luther Burden, over Matthew Golden, and Emeka Egbuka. I just think his upside is just so much higher than those guys athletically as a wide receiver on so many different levels. So 105 is kind of my sweet spot for him. I understand if someone wants to maybe drop them a little bit because they're scared. I also understand if you want to pick them up anywhere, starting at the 103. So I get it.
Wow, that's really interesting. I haven't seen him in the 2 rookie drafts that I've done. He's been late first round, which is just as you were. Yeah, and I agree with that. Here's my thing, and I'm not saying I don't agree with you. I'm just saying I want to add something on top of to what you're saying. He's going to be out there in defensive packages. Mm-hmm. Correct me if I'm wrong, but Travis Hunter, the wide receiver only, is not the number 2 pick in the NFL draft. You're drafting Travis Hunter number 2 because he is a wide receiver, a very good one, and he is a cornerback also, and a very good one at that as well, right?
I don't know, man. If he was just a wide receiver, we saw what Drake London was the 6th overall pick. I think he's a better wide receiver prospect than Drake London.
He was 8th.
I think he's as good, if not better, of a wide receiver prospect than Drake London. So I think even if he was just playing one position, maybe cornerback, he doesn't go 2nd overall. Maybe wide receiver is not 2nd overall. Maybe it's more like 4th or 5th. But I still think he's a top 10 prospect at either one of those positions individually.
The only thing for me is I think he's definitely going to be on the field defensively as well. I don't think he's only going to be on the field defensively 20% of the time. I think that you draft him 2nd overall because he can play both sides of the ball. As Andrew Berry said, he's a unicorn. Mm-hmm. And so I'm very risk adverse in my dynasty process. So that really depends on you. 105 for me is a little high, but that's getting close to where I'd feel comfortable. I don't feel that the top 4 for me are pretty locked in. Then we can start talking about Tyler Warren, wherever he goes. If he goes to the Colts, I don't know how interested I am, but maybe you can throw him at the 105 depending on your league's tight end premium. Mm-hmm. When we get to that Matthew Golden, Luther Burden spot of your rookie drafts, Nate, that's where I'd feel comfortable taking Travis Hunter. I don't even know if I'd feel comfortable taking him over Teteroa McMillan at this point in time, but it's close to me there. I don't know if you agree or disagree there because you sound pretty high on him.
I think it's close. I have him at the 105, and that's the highest I personally would have him in a draft. I think I'm usually pretty risk adverse myself. So when it comes down to it on the clock, depending on how my team looks like, maybe I would have him more like the 107 or something like that. I don't think I'm dropping him too much lower than that. The 107, 108. I think he's kind of in that 105 to 108 range for me. And I get it. Like I said, I'm usually pretty risk adverse myself, but if there's one guy I'm not going to kind of doubt, it's this guy. He's proven everyone wrong so far. He won the Heisman, and there's other guys that were, absolutely competitive for that Heisman Award. And you can argue maybe Genty should have got it. If he had a bit stronger and had actually broken Barry Sanders' record, I think he would have got it. But Travis Hunter, there's arguments over him getting the Biletnikoff Award, but he still put up top 5 numbers every single major stat category for the wide receivers. So even if maybe, there were some other guys that performed slightly better, this guy put up top 5 numbers while also playing quarterback. I'm not going to doubt him going into the NFL, to be quite honest. Like, we haven't seen a guy like this. Like, this guy is special, and I'm willing to bet on this guy.
Yeah, I hear you, Nate. Let's move on here. We got a lot of questions, and we don't have forever, but we really do appreciate these questions. This one comes from Running Man through our Discord. He said, which quarterback seems likely to slip into the back end of the first round of the NFL draft? If it's someone like Milroe, where does that push him in Superflex rookie drafts? So obviously, Nate, we're not talking about Cam Ward. We're not talking about Shedeur Sanders. I don't think, because he's talking about a team maybe coming back into the end of the first round. So you're talking about maybe Tyler Shuck, Jackson Dart, or Jalen Milroe.
Yep. I think it's one of those 3 guys most likely. Yeah, we saw Jalen Milroe. He got invited to the draft. So that was an interesting little wrinkle that's been thrown into this. Because I didn't think that Milroe really had any chance of being a first rounder. But him being invited to the draft means there's a chance that someone could pick him up there in the last couple of picks. I'm still leaning that he will be more likely a second-round pick than a first-round pick for sure. But, hey, we never know what happens on draft night. There's anywhere from seeing teams reach for quarterbacks to, going back to the Kenny Pickett draft, just letting them fall and going after other guys. So I do think out of those 3, Jackson Dart certainly is the most likely to go in the first round. There's a slight chance he gets picked before Shedeur Sanders, but I really don't think that's going to happen. But some people do have Dart as their quarterback too. I think, especially with the Saints opening up, we might see quarterback go a little bit earlier. So, this third or fourth quarterback that comes into the end of the first round, it's most likely going to be Tyler Shuck, I think, if anyone kind of gets into like that end of the first round. Now, for me, as much as I think Tyler Shuck can, kind of get ready and just play in the NFL right now. You watch the college film, he looks like a pro quarterback who's already playing in college. He's really, really accurate with the ball. He's got a great deep pass. He's very smart with the ball as well. But he's going to be 26 before the end of the season. He's going to be 30 years old before his rookie contract's up. He's an older prospect. I don't know how much more development there is with Tyler Shuck. He's been in there for 6 years. He's, just like a week younger or older than Trevor Lawrence. He was in the same recruiting class as Trevor Lawrence. He was throwing the ball to Juwan Johnson, Juwan Johnson in Oregon back in the day. So, he's been around a while. So, after 6 years in college, I expect you to be a good quarterback. You've had plenty of time to figure it out. So, I really do wonder about, how much more he can do at the NFL level. I don't want to say he's Brandon Weeden, but I'm getting some Brandon Weeden vibes, especially because he's been mocked to the Browns in the second round early on. I don't mind him going to the Browns as kind of being like a bridge quarterback who offers some upside because he is new to the NFL. But I think he's got a high floor, low ceiling kind of player. So, if he was to get himself into the first round, I'm not picking him up in the first round in my rookie draft, most likely. But it does seem likely that he'd be starting relatively soon for that team. So I do think he'd be absolutely worth a second round pick for sure. In probably the first half of the second round pick, even though I probably wouldn't be doing it personally, probably be looking elsewhere just because I don't necessarily believe in the long-term upside of Shuck. Now, if Jalen Milroe goes in the late first, now that's a big question. That really does, change some things up. If he goes at the end of the first, there's going to be like comparisons to like Lamar Jackson and stuff like that, of course, which are going to be completely unfounded. But with the upside that Milroe has, because early on in the offseason, I did have Milroe as my quarterback 3. Right now is my quarterback 4 after Ward, Sanders, and Dart. But the upside that he brings is some of the highest in the entire draft class between the arm strength, the athletic ability on the ground. And, we did see flashes of him being a true quarterback while he was at Alabama. It's just the consistency was not there. So if he goes somewhere at the end of the first where he's able to sit for a year, I'm willing to take a look at him at the back end of the first round because, you might have to wait a little bit to get that investment, that return on the investment. But, you won't have to wait as long as you did for Jordan Love, and that worked out pretty well.
Yeah, I think I'm kind of with you here on these quarterbacks, Nate. And even if they don't slip into the back end of the first round, let's just say they go early second, like Jalen Milroe to the Giants potentially, which I think is a phenomenal landing spot just because of Brian Daboll and what he's done with Josh Allen and fixing his accuracy. What's Milroe's biggest issue is
only problem there is I don't know if the ball is there next year to continue to develop Milroe.
Yeah, I get that. And, you would hope in an ideal world there's an organizational plan. Everybody together, but that's in an ideal world, and we don't live in that. So, just for me, just to answer this question real quick, I don't even think I would feel comfortable drafting Jalen Milroe in the first round, just because I'm, again, risk adverse. Middle to early to mid second round, no problem. Kind of like Michael Penix last year, even though he was a top 10 draft pick, I didn't see a reasonable area where he starts anytime soon. I mean, I did not see Kirk Cousins, and you really can't see that when they sign a guy to $100 million contract that a team's going to be willing to eat like $50 million of dead money. You can't predict that. You kind of have to go on common sense. And common sense says teams don't really do that. We are seeing a little bit more. Conversation for another day. But for me, it's early to mid second round is where I'm really looking at those guys. If one of them lands with the Rams, that will change things for me. Okay, I did this in our mock draft at Superflex. I drafted Jackson Dart at 110 when he went 26 overall to the Rams.
I think Dart is a late, like a 10, 11, 12 kind of guy in your first round if he's a first rounder, which it seems likely he's a first rounder at this point, more likely than not. Landing spot will kind of affect where I'd actually have him at the end of the day, but the Rams would be a dream landing spot for Dart for sure.
Yeah, and so that's like the ceiling for me is one of those players, and it had to be creme de la creme landing spot, and those things don't always work out. But anyways, look, we talked about Tyler Shuck. I wanted to transition into a question that I actually had, Nate, and this question spurned the whole video. I was watching you talk about Tyler Shuck, and I was like, ooh, I would love to ask Nate this question. Why don't we do a mailbag video? So we're talking about Tyler Shuck, 26 years old, when he gets drafted. Coming into the NFL, we saw Tyrone Tracy last year. I think he was already 24 years old. The year before that, now obviously this hasn't taken a hold, but Hendon Hooker was the talk before the draft, and he was 25, 26 years old. We are obviously seeing things play out a little differently with NIL, and we're at the beginning of this NIL thing. This is going to be normal, where we have players 24, 25, 26 coming out of college football into the NFL draft because there's incentive to stay. 10 years ago, there was no incentive to stay in school. You were not getting paid, and you wanted to go get your bag while you could, so to say. And now you don't have to do that. Now you can get probably more money through NIL than you can as a day 3 NFL pick. So you're seeing players stay in college a little bit more and also be developed a little bit more. I think another really good example of this is Bo Nix, right? Yeah. Bo Nix had 60 starts in college, and we're seeing that experience now translate into the NFL, where they're relevant players. Bo Nix was a top 10 quarterback last year. Tyrone Tracy was, I think, borderline RB2, even though he didn't start the year. And look, we don't know how things are going to change with the draft. All I'm saying is he was relevant for being a 4th round pick in your rookie draft. So Nate, I obviously you've done a lot of draft prospecting for us at the channel here for years. Something we always look at is players' ages. Like, hey, they're 24 years old. They should be dominating in college. Well, this is going to be normal now. So does that change anything for you, how you look at these prospects? And I'll take this just a little bit further. You're seeing quarterbacks, right? Sam Darnold, Baker Mayfield, Geno Smith develop in their late 20s, early 30s. Is age as much of a factor for your draft prospecting as it used to be?
Hey all, I'm Jamie Lynn Sigler, a mom, actor, and advocate. I know how overwhelming it can be trying to decide which treatment is right for you. I've been there. But you should know you're not alone. You can do this. Start with some research, talk to the community, and most importantly, don't be afraid to ask your doctor questions. You might find results that speak for themselves. That's how I landed on Kesimpta. Ask your doctor if Kesimpta, ofatumumab, could be right for you. You can check out the details at kesimpta.com.
Yeah, this is a really good question, and it's a very long, complicated answer that I'll try to make as quick as possible because a lot of it does deal with the college landscape, which is ever-changing and chaos right now. So first thing I'll say is the great players will still come out early. The best players are still going to come out for 3 years. Jeremiah Smith, wide receiver for Ohio State, still most likely will come out after his junior year because he's going to be a top 5 pick in the NFL draft. And, as great as Ohio State is and as much money as they're going to be in NIL, we'll still see the best players early declare. I don't think we're going to stop seeing that. But we will see older prospects. We will still see guys stay in school longer. Now, you mentioned the quarterbacks. I think quarterback longevity in college is a bonus. I think it's great because what I've learned from the NFL over the past decade is that the NFL is not a quarterback development league.
Correct.
The teams that preach it when they draft somebody who's development, they don't usually stand by it. We saw with Anthony Richardson after like a couple months, after a year, they were preaching a totally different thing than they were saying when they picked him up. There's a lot of pressure internally, externally. There's not time to develop these quarterbacks anymore. So the more time a quarterback spends in college, I think the better off they will be in their NFL career, as well as hitting the ground and going right away, as we saw with Bo Nix this past year. You look at Super Bowl winning quarterbacks, and many of them had a long college career. And we're looking at, quarterbacks who've now been successful in the NFL. And you see that a lot too. There's more success stories from quarterbacks who spent a long time in college than there are the guys that, had one great year and then went to the NFL. So I think for quarterbacks, the longevity in college is going to really help them more so than other positions. But other positions I do think will also be helped. Now, one thing, just a quick little sneak peek into the chaotic world of college football that a lot of people don't really know about if they don't pay attention to college football. And if you just pay attention to your team on Saturdays, you still might not truly understand this until maybe just recently with Nico Iamaleava leaving Tennessee, going to UCLA, holding out, wanting more money, the team saying no. That opened up a lot of people's eyes to the chaos that is currently in the world of college football and NIL. And I can try to, tell you exactly where we are right now, but it's not really going to matter much longer. NIL will still exist, but we're going to have revenue sharing within a year or so, where every single team, every single college program will be sharing about $20 million with their athletes per year. So there's going to be revenue sharing, which will kind of make things a bit more even across the board. So we're going to maybe see less transfers, which is a good thing. But the transfer portal also playing a part in this, as we saw guys like Bo Nix, transfer from Auburn after he was being looked at as a first-round pick after his freshman season. Then a terrible season with Auburn, as that program was in chaos. Goes to Oregon, rebuilds his career, ends up being a first-round pick. So the transfer portal has been huge. Dylan Gabriel started at UCF, went to Oklahoma, ended his career at Oregon. Lots of guys that we've seen transfer and transfer up and get better. So between the NIL, the transfer portal, new opportunities for guys to have a second chance at the NFL. And that's what we've seen with some of these guys. So, early breakouts, the breakout age stuff, it's great. I still think it applies to like the top elite players, but I do think we have to take these things into context moving forward of, how was the scheme for that guy? Why did he transfer? Now, as things get a bit more consistent, I think we're going to have a better feel of this. It's still a little chaotic right now. But once we have revenue sharing, NIL won't be as much pay to play as it is right now. It'll just be more so what it's supposed to be in name, image, likeness, and being able to sell, those things. Mm-hmm. But I do think a lot of players who are on that day 3 edge are going to go back to college. And then that gives them the opportunity to move up into a day 2, maybe even a day 1 pick. And we're going to see that. I don't think we need to avoid those guys. I still think that age matters a little bit, for sure. I mean, we see the best guys come out early. The elite players, they usually come out early. So, if you have a guy in college for 5-6 years, most likely not going to be the elite NFL player. That's really hard to achieve. But that doesn't mean they can't be a good starter. Doesn't mean they can't be a good role player and be a flex play in your lineup. So I think, we definitely need to make sure we're looking at these guys. But also, you see a guy break out in his 6th year, I'm still going to be a little wary about that. If you did 5 years and did nothing, and then you finally broke out in your 6th year, I think a lot of 24-year-olds probably can beat up some 18-year-olds.
Yeah, for sure. Just one quick nugget, and then we'll move on to the next question. I said this in our Discord. Again, check that pinned comment. Get access to our Discord free week. I just said this in our Discord a few months ago. It's like, dude, we just need to start having better dialogue about, like, why players are succeeding now at 22, 23. Like, it can't just be like, well, they're 23 and they're like, maybe they were just in a crap system. Like, look, what good pro for our fantasy leagues has come from the Tennessee offense, Nate? None.
I guess the last one was Alvin Kamara, but that was before Josh Heupel was
Exactly. So same thing with Ole Miss. Like, what wide receivers?
Tillman, maybe.
Maybe.
Yeah, depending
Maybe.
on how
I hope so. I'm high on Cedric Tillman. All right, let's move on to the next question. This was asked by, I think it's Darth Zader, but I wrote Xander. Might have been a typo because I have fat fingers. He said he asked a bunch of questions. We only got time for one or two from each. So he said, Nate, who do you think might have the chance to become the next Puka Nacua out of this draft class?
Man. The next Puka Nacua. Everyone wants to know who the next Puka Nacua is. And if I knew who it was, I wouldn't tell you because I would get them all for myself.
I love that. Yeah.
But to find the next Puka Nacua, we need to find a day 3 draft pick who's going to come out and be a top 5, top 10 NFL wide receiver. So the answer is nobody, most likely. But we do have these guys every now and then. Amon-Ra St. Brown, I believe, was a 5th round pick, and he's obviously become a 4th round pick. Yeah, 4th. But day 3, we're looking at day 3 guys around here. So who's gonna be that day 3 kind of breakout star? Let's kind of take a step back from looking for the next Puka Nacua, and let's look at who at day 3 is really going to be able to take that next step. And I'm taking a look at wide receivers because Puka Nacua, that's what we're talking about here. Day 3 running backs usually don't have quite the same success. Shout out Kyron Williams, though. I'll give him that.
Hey, let's go. Hey, some improvement there. I love that.
I'll give it to him. All right. But some guys that I like out of day 3 that I think it's important to keep an eye on. I will say Torrey Horton, Colorado State, someone that we haven't really got to talk about a lot. There was rumors that at one point he wasn't even going to be able to declare for the draft because of some injuries. He was expected to come out last year, ended up not coming out last year. Didn't really have the season necessarily that Colorado State wanted to have this past year, but he tested really, really, really well. I mean, top 5% tester athletically. He's a bigger guy, about 6'2", 190 pounds. He's very, very productive throughout his entire career. So he's got the production, he's got the athleticism, he's got, the size. So there's a lot to like with Torrey Horton. I think he's a guy that we are going to have to keep an eye on. One of the better day 3 wide receivers with upside around there. Another guy that I don't want to steal your thunder, Zach, but I do have to mention Isaac Tesla out of Arkansas. Tested really well as well. And man, he's got some of the best hands in the class. Caught the ball really, really well at the combine. Was very
0
impressive.
drops, I think, last year.
Yeah, was very impressive at the gauntlet. The gauntlet's always a really fun drill to watch for wide receivers. See how they catch the ball, how they release it, how they move on to the next one and track the ball. So he did really, really well there. So those are 2 guys I definitely want to mention. I don't think that this year's wide receiver class is that deep. I think there's plenty of guys around. But not necessarily a very deep class. Jalen Royals is someone else I mentioned. I think he might end up being a day 2 pick, but he could also be. He'll fall into the beginning of the 4th round. But he's a guy that I think has a lot more upside than people are talking about right now as well.
Yeah, listen. I just went to look at Isaac Tesla's comparables on NFLDraftBuzz.com. Let me just read you this list. It's Justin Shorter. I don't know who this guy is. Malachi Carter and then Nico Collins.
I mean, that's a pretty good list to be a part of. That's for sure.
Nico Collins. I hate that I'm putting this information out there. I really hate that I'm putting that information out there because, I've done 2 rookie mock drafts. I've been able to scoop up Tesla in the 5th round. And look, I mean, that's probably where I'd be looking at him even with this information out there because he's probably getting day 3 draft capital. No idea what his team situation looks like. Obviously, you like for these players that we're talking about. The other thing, we're not just looking at the players, we're looking at the systems, right? Because Puka Nacua didn't put up gaudy numbers in college. He just landed in a great system to utilize his traits. So that's the other thing there. So the other thing is we don't always have to look for the next Puka Nacua, right? You just look for Tyrone Tracy was a good 4th round pick, right? You got some production out of him. So all right, let's go here to the next question, Nate. I think this was from you. This was a question.
I did put this question in here.
All right.
I just had a couple guys. So I already had an answer,
All right. There you go. So, and I wanted that. I wanted you and I to include a question too. So, you asked Nate, who has the most to lose in the NFL draft?
Yeah, I have a couple guys from a couple different positions here. Guys that could be either replaced or be, have some competition that's pretty significant to eat into their touches and maybe limit their upside that some people are already pretty excited about going in, through the offseason. At the wide receiver position, Jaden Reed, one guy that I love, but it sounds like there's a lot of smoke about the Green Bay Packers adding a wide receiver. Jaden Reed's already limited to 70% snaps. I think he'll still be effective when he's on the field, but if they do get a true wide receiver 1 out there, they got a bunch of wide receiver 2s If they get a true wide receiver 1 somehow, or even another wide receiver 2, there's just going to be a lot of competition there. There already is a lot of mouths to feed. So Jaden Reed is someone I don't think he's going to, end up falling out into like wide receiver 5, wide receiver 6 territory or anything, but it limits his upside for sure. Cedric Tillman, Jalen Coker, 2 guys that I think are going to be replaced. We already kind of know that Travis Hunter is going to the Browns, so that moves Tillman down to wide receiver 3, which is a solid place for him. But I think Coker also is going to have some competition that moves him back to that wide receiver 3 position, wide receiver 4, because, Adam Thielen's there, of course. Got to keep him around. At the running back position, Jalen Warren. I know a lot of people love Jalen Warren. Kenny Gainwell's there. I'm not worried about Kenny Gainwell, but I do think the Steelers are going to draft somebody. They're not going to hand the ball off to Jalen Warren 25 times a game. No way. Chase Brown. I love me some Chase Brown, but they're going to find someone to replace Zach Moss. They're going to need a thumper in that backfield to go with Chase Brown. Chase Brown will still probably be very productive and efficient on his touches. Does limit his upside a little bit, but they do need that power back to kind of go with him. So keep an eye on that. I could even see, running backs like, let me pull him up here. I think Raheem Sanders could be a good day 3 pick there, but I'd also be careful. Maybe they go like Cam Skadagbo, Caleb Johnson, and then it's going to be, that'd be a lot of competition for Chase Brown. So it could either be a day 2 pick, it could be a day 3 pick, either way. And then your guy, Tyrone Tracy. I know you love him, but there's a large chance he gets
got to face reality.
Yep, of course. And then at the tight end position, 2 guys I think could lose their starting job, which tight ends, sucks to see him lose their starting job after they've been productive. But Jake Ferguson for the Cowboys and Cole Kmet for the Bears. There's been some smoke about those guys getting some competition in there. It's going to depend on what that draft capital ends up for their competition. But, there's been some talk about Tyler Warren going to the Bears to be, for Ben Johnson to have that guy he can build an offense around. That would obviously replace Cole Kmet. Jake Ferguson, I've seen Loveland slotted there a couple times. Mason Taylor could go there. I think that he would give Jake Ferguson a run for his money pretty quickly. So those are 2 guys I keep an eye on as well.
Just want to add a couple names here to the running back. Well, first of all, the running backs, listen, almost every team's going to draft
any running back could be replaced.
Every team, like I've had all these trade dialogues like, well, I'm afraid that they're like, yeah, dude, everybody's probably going to draft a running back this year. There's like 20 to 25 pretty good running backs in this class. And like, don't let that make you afraid of buying or trying to sell a running back if it's at an appropriate cost, right? Because I think like Brian Robinson's probably in some trouble too.
Probably
DeAndre Swift. DeAndre Swift's probably in some trouble.
Swift. These are guys you probably should try to move this week.
That or just like, maybe you could even buy them if other teams are trying to sell, but buy appropriately. Like buy knowing that they're the B in the timeshare or whatever it is. And then one other player on tight ends I wanted to add, potentially Brenton Strange. We don't know. He's had this big bump ever since Evan Ingram came in there. But this general manager in Jacksonville, I don't know his name, he did not draft Brenton Strange. And he's not Liam Cohen's guy. So we don't know how that's going to go. So just somebody I wanted to add in there for a couple of names here, there. All right, so let's get to our next question here. We'll do a couple more, and then we'll head out. By the way, let us know in the comments. Do you agree, disagree with us? Anything that you want to add in there? You could do another question for another mailbag that we're going to do in the future. So hopefully this is something we'll do a little bit more of here. So this question here comes from Roland through our Discord. Roland said, "What landing spots or rounds vault players up and down tiers for you, Nate?"
Yeah, real quick with the round answer, I always have a big gap between day 2 and day 3 prospects, especially for the running back position. So, if you don't get drafted Friday night at the running back position, there is a big tier drop for me down to the day 3 running backs. Even in this year's draft, though, I will try to minimize that gap a little bit because I know the depth of the position is going to affect where these guys are drafted. But if you get drafted day 2, like, there's a lot of studying that you can do that shows you that you're going to get a good bit of usage, unless some injuries pop up or you're just stuck behind a really good starter. But you're going to have a really good opportunity if you're a day 2 running back, and you're going to have opportunity for a couple of years. Now, day 3 running back, even if you're a 4th round guy, if you don't get the opportunity early on, you might not get it at all, because a lot of teams just drafted day 3 running back just about every year. So it's a bit more of a replaceable draft capital, but day 2 draft capital for running back is huge. So anyone who was day 2 draft capital, anyone who maybe was supposed to be day 3 and ended up being day 2 sneaking in there, it's going to be definitely vaulting them up my tiers at the running back position. Same goes, of course, for tight end and wide receiver, but much more so at the running back position. Landing spots, now there's some obvious ones. Anyone who goes to the Chiefs always gets a huge bump, but this year I think they're pretty already set at offensive skill positions. Now, if they draft a running back, I think that will be interesting because Pacheco, I think, only has one year left on his deal over there. But outside of Pacheco, we haven't really seen a consistent running back for the Chiefs. So I think that's one thing to keep in mind, and maybe let some other people draft whoever that guy is. But at the wide receiver position, the LA Chargers, that's going to kind of move someone up a little bit for me. Because I think there's opportunity there. They don't really have a strong wide receiver 2 there. And I'm saying Ladd McConkey is the wide receiver 1. People out there, depending on who they draft, might tell you Ladd's going to be the wide receiver 2. They're going to have to draft someone in the first round for that to happen because Ladd McConkey is really, really good. But I think that's a really good opportunity to step into a wide receiver 2 role there with a really good quarterback, really good coach, and a good offense. Denver, I think also, if they draft a wide receiver, I think that could be a huge bump for that guy. I'm not convinced by Marvin Mims or Troy Franklin as a wide receiver 2 there. And Sutton's 29 years old right now. So, whoever they draft could potentially be the wide receiver 1 or a very, big wide receiver for Bo Nix moving forward. At the running back position, it's going to be interesting if the Arizona Cardinals go back to the running back well after drafting Trey Benson last year. They have James Conner, of course, still, but, they're going to be looking for that replacement eventually. Denver, again, with the running back position. We've seen Sean Payton really go with a bell cow before. He said he wants to committee, but I don't believe that until I see it. So I think if someone goes to Denver, that could bump them up a slot or 2. Dallas, of course, as well. I'm not worried about who they picked up in free agency. If they draft someone in the first 3 rounds, I'm thinking that's probably their running back 1, and the veterans are kind of dispelling them. There's definitely some positions, and especially at running back, whenever there's an opening at running back, like the Dallas Cowboys or Denver, you could put a 4th round guy in there. He's going to be jumping up. He's going to be jumping up. I'm going to be cautious. And just because he's a 4th round guy, I'm not going to put him up there like in the 1st round or anything like that. But if one of those guys with the running back position, it's all about opportunity. It's all about touches. We're chasing volume at the running back position. We're chasing volume in a lot of positions actually in fantasy football because it's all based on box score. But volume at the running back position is king. And, anyone who goes into those spots is going to get a huge, huge bump to their draft value.
Yeah. Basically for me, what I'm looking for here is what system do I want a player to land in? And you nailed a lot of them. Mm-hmm. And then I'm trying to find the systems that I think are going to surprise us with fantasy production that we didn't see a year ago. Like a good example of this 2 years ago is the Houston Texans, right? Nobody saw the CJ Stroud boom coming with Nico Collins. Well, I think you can point to a couple of teams, the New England Patriots, right? If a wide receiver or running back is drafted there, that's a chance to soak up some value. There's another team I had now. I can't remember.
The Jaguars too, because all they got there is Brian Thomas Jr. I mean, of course, Diami Brown went there. Parker Washington's a fun guy too, but they could very easily draft someone, and that person could walk in to be the wide receiver too.
And I'm pretty confident. I think I'm one of the higher people on the Tennessee Titans, especially if they get Cam Ward. Sure. I believe in Brian Callahan. I've seen what he did with Joe Burrow, who's obviously a top 5 quarterback in the NFL, but I've seen what kind of offense he can have. So if he gets the pieces in place that's not named Will Levis, that he might be able to have a more functioning offense. So you nailed the landing spots. I'm looking for systems that I believe in and systems that other people aren't looking at that might, their ADP might increase a year from now. So
I think another one that fits your category is the Carolina Panthers. We saw Bryce Young look really good at the end of the season. They don't really have a true number 1 there. They got Adam Thielen, they got Xavier Legette, depending on who they will go after. And this is kind of tough for the wide receivers because I don't think it's a very strong class after the first couple of guys. So you're not going to draft someone most likely in day 2 who's going to step in and be your wide receiver 1. It's going to be hard enough for them to step in and be your wide receiver 2 most likely. So, it's going to be interesting to see how much of a bump we really give those guys, but there is definitely opportunity there.
All right, Nate, let's get to a couple more questions here. We already went over the sleeper wide receivers kind of. So let's just get your sleeper running backs. This question comes from Jay Maiden. And he asks, who are our favorite sleeper running backs? This is obviously a very good running back class, but who might be some guys you're looking at in your 4th or 5th, even 5th rounds of your rookie drafts, Nate?
Yeah, okay, well, that's pretty deep. I got to mention one guy first, Devin Neal, who I talk about all the time, is my favorite sleeper. He's outside the top 5. He's just about in the top 5 for me, just about.
That's not a sleeper, man. Give him a real one.
Capital. I mean, he's a sleeper because I think he's a top 5 running back, but we'll see where his draft capital is. But other sleepers, I mean, Mike and I have talked about DJ Giddens a good bit. He's more of a early day 3, maybe he sneaks into day 2. Maybe he's one of those guys that talk about that if he gets in the day 2, his value really goes up for me. If he's in the day 3, maybe not so much. I do like Jaden Blue as a receiving back. I think that's kind of his role. I don't think he's going to, become a day 3 down workhorse or anything like that. But I think Jaden Blue could be a really good receiving back in a committee. And we talked about it before, running backs who get receiving work, they have good opportunity. Brashard Smith out of SMU, I like him as well. He was a former wide receiver, so it's another guy that's going to have really good receiving work. So those are 2 guys that are going to be available 3rd, 4th round of your rookie draft, and with the receiving work that they're capable of, would offer some upside in fantasy football, being able to put them into your flex, things like that. A lot of the sleepers, we know about because it's such a big running back class. But I think LaQuint Allen as well out of Syracuse is someone to keep an eye on. He's probably going to be available 4th, 5th round, like you mentioned. Yeah. Woody Marks out of USC. He's been a couple different places, but he's a pretty hard runner. I do like him. And then one other guy I'll mention, Montrell Johnson out of Florida. He's got a lot of speed. Was at Louisiana Lafayette for a little bit. Followed Billy Napier over to Florida when he moved there, and split some time with Trevor Etienne when they were both there. Didn't put up the greatest numbers. Florida as an offense wasn't super great, very consistent either. But I like Montrell Johnson and his speed. So if he gets an opportunity, we could see him have a couple flashes.
Yeah. I got 2 players. We'll just knock on them real quick. And these are like super late guys. Definitely expect these to be day 3, maybe 6th, 7th round guys. I'm just hoping to land in good systems. One is Jarquez Hunter. I think the Ravens would be perfect for Jarquez Hunter.
I like that fit. That's a decent fit.
Oh, man. Make that happen, please. I will get so much Jarquez Hunter. We can forget about who did they draft last year? I can't even remember who it was anymore. And then the running back that tore his knee to shreds. Like, Jarquez Hunter, RB2 in that system, put him behind Derrick Henry. Oh, perfect fit. And then another one of my favorites, nobody's talking about this guy, is Ja'Cory Crosky-Merritt. 5th or 6th year player, who knows, because the NCAA ruled him ineligible after 1 game last year. He did have over 100 yards and a touchdown on 13 carries in that game for Arizona. Transferred him from New Mexico, and then the NCAA was like, no, you're ineligible, but they didn't figure that out prior to the season. So a little bit of an older prospect. That would have been his 6th year in college, but he was the Shrine Bowl MVP. He's just a violent runner, man. Like, I have watched some of his film. He's exciting. We have no idea if he's going to be good or even relevant in the NFL. He may be a special teamer. I have no idea. But if he lands on like the Chiefs or the Cowboys or the Commanders, anybody with an opening, just like we talked about in a system, that's somebody I'll target in my 4th or 5th round and hope that's, maybe due to injuries or whatever it may be, he gets an opportunity. But I just really liked his running style. It's like Isaiah Pacheco, watching him run, watching his film. What was it, Rutgers or Syracuse? Where was Pacheco?
Rutgers,
yeah. Like
Rutgers,
just that violent, reckless, abandoned type of runner. But really didn't get to show off his ability to play against better competition because he did transfer to Arizona, but was ruled ineligible after 1 game. Mm-hmm. So that guy's totally a 5th round pick if you even have 5 rounds, or if not, he's a free agent pick.
He's UDFA.
But I just like this film, so that's what I'm looking for there in the 5th round. And then we got one more question here, Nate. This is gonna be a little personal one. We kind of want to have some fun here. It doesn't have to be all serious questions here. So I don't want to talk about my Dolphins because they should just draft all trenches. Like they should. I mean, the Dolphins never do the right thing, but they should draft all trenches. So we'll talk about your Ravens here. This came from Zader again through our Discord. He said, Nate, knowing you're a Ravens fan, top 5 prospects for the Ravens to draft in the 1st round.
Yeah, this is a good question. I've taken a look at the draft board, read plenty of mock drafts, of course, with the Ravens. And I think, some of their biggest positions of need, you could use another cornerback, could use another safety, always could use defensive line help, offensive line help. So, taking into account, looking at the trenches or going to the secondary, I think those are good places to look in the 1st round. Malachi Starks is obviously someone I would love for them to land. I've seen a couple mock drafts with him landing there. He would have to fall a little bit for the Ravens to pick him up, but he was a safety, so that position's usually a little bit undervalued in the 1st round of the draft. So I think there's a chance. If not Malachi Starks, I do like the idea of the South Carolina safety, Nick Iamani Wari, who tested just off the charts, like 99th percentile, just insane. Kind of has that Kyle Hamilton build, being like 6'3", 6'4" as well. So there's two safeties I definitely like. I like the idea of them picking up on the other side of the ball, Tyler Booker, a guard out of Alabama. They could use a really, really good guard. Of course, building up that offensive line with Derrick Henry, Lamar Jackson back there. We just watched what the Eagles did with a really good offensive line, really good running game. I mean, the Ravens already have a really good running game. They continue to add to that, make sure that offensive line is a bit more consistent than it was last year. I would love to see that happen. At the edge position, I've seen, Shamar Stewart being put there. I've seen Mike Williams out of Georgia. I think those are two good edge prospects. I would love for the Ravens to get a really good edge guy. I don't know if it's going to be there at their position. I think this is a pretty deep edge class, so it might be something they want to look at day 2. And then, there's also defensive tackles that I think could be really useful for the Baltimore Ravens. I'm trying to pull up the interior defenders in this draft. They're obviously not going to – Walter Nolan would be pretty great. They're obviously not – I don't think they're going to get any of the Michigan guys. But I think Walter Nolan is someone that I have seen there. Derek Harmon as well out of Oregon. Those are two guys. They could definitely use someone. Michael Pierce retired, so defensive lineman would also look really good in the first round. But I'm not too worried about it. I'm never too worried about how the Ravens draft because they always draft well. They're patient. They draft right off their board. They don't make emotional decisions. They draft the best player available. So whoever they pick, it's going to be good. Zach, I wasn't even that ecstatic when they picked Lamar Jackson, to be quite honest. I was like, I get it, but I love me some Joe Flacco, but I trusted them. I trust the process, and it's obviously worked out quite well. So,
man, I wish I could say the same. I really do. Last question real quick. And connect the dots, if you will. Do the Ravens draft a kicker?
They probably they've talked about it. I think I don't know if they'll draft a kicker because they really value their draft capital. And I don't think you have to draft a kicker to get a good kicker.
I've seen Andres Borregales from Miami mock to them in like the 6th round.
I mean, maybe they got 11 picks. They got 11 picks right now, which is like one of the highest in the draft. I expect them to move around the board since they have 11 picks. I don't think they'll end the draft with 11 draft selections. So I think they will move around. If they end up keeping 10, 11, yeah, sure, they can draft a kicker. But I think otherwise they probably just looking to bring some guys. Maybe they have someone in mind and they use their 7th round pick on it.
Yeah. Very interesting to see what will happen. Look,
they'll definitely bring in somebody though. That's for sure.
Oh yeah, they will.
I think so.
Hit us up in the comments. Let us know what you thought. If you have any questions for us, you can leave them there. A better place to do that though is our Discord. Again, a free week access. We'd love to see you in there. This is such a big week for fantasy football channels in general, and we're going to be doing a lot of work together. I'm going up there to Nate's house. We're going to hang out, cook some breakfast. Nate cooks lunch and dinner. We have a whole system. Set up. But are we live streaming this weekend?
Yeah,
Nate?
live streaming Friday morning, Saturday morning, Perfect. Sunday morning.
I didn't want to promote it if we weren't doing it. So we'll be doing that. You can get your questions in there. Obviously priorities will be super chats, but we just love to just grow this community, to have you guys tell us what you think, so on and so forth. So leave a comment or join our Discord. Let us know that you saw this video. So hopefully we'll see you guys this weekend on the live streams. If not, we'll hopefully see you in the Discord. And if not, we'll see you in our next mailbag video right here on the Dynasty Rewind.